delay. Can I make my presentation?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. I sincerely want to apologize to everyone present for the delay. Basically, the topic for our presentation this afternoon is learning experiences and challenges facing Black international students at the University of Windsor. We have 3 people who submitted this abstract. Myself, Linda Kootman, who is in another presentation, Olayemisi Babajide, and Egbe Otowa. Egbe Otowa is the postdoc that's working under me. He had an emergency and he had to travel to Nigeria today. Basically, the rationale for looking at this topic is that we all know that COVID-19 led the university into online learning, and we had a lot of changes, a lot of restrictions, the lockdown, etc., etc. However, in the last 2 decades, we know that international student population had increased to about 600,000. And according to Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, international students contributed an estimated 21.6 billion to Canadian gross domestic product. However, with the COVID-19, some of these international students that were offered admission for the last academic year could not make it to Canada, and some of them are in their countries. And at the same time, we have some students here, mainly from Nigeria, who are already living in Windsor, and they also had to go live according to the guidelines in terms of isolation, etc., etc. So what we did basically is that I have an ongoing project called We Speak Project. And during this We Speak Project, we had a debriefing with university students. And in the process of the debriefing of our data, students began to talk about their experiences as international students. And that's where the interest on this topic started. And so my presentation actually is going to be based on that conversation that we had from that focus group discussion with 10 students. They were all males because the project was focused on males, and they were all African, mainly Nigerian, and they were in different programs in the university, from engineering to science and to the social sciences. I also include just one case scenario of a student who could not make it to Windsor yet, but is still in Nigeria. Basically, in that discussion, we found that there were a number of factors that has shaped their experiences and brought some challenges to them in terms of learning, basically. One of them is the student study permit. According to them, the student study permit gives some students opportunity to work outside campus, but for some of them, they can't work outside campus. And so with the COVID-19 and the lockdown, it meant that some of them were not able to work. And in addition to that, because of the lockdown and because of the closure of many businesses, some of them find it more difficult to get a job in order to be able to get some income to meet some of their personal needs. And another thing I also want to say here is that the lockdown also created some isolation for these students because they were not able to physically interact with their peers and with other members of the university community. In terms of their economic situation, the fact remains that COVID affected the whole world. And so it also affected the Nigerian economy. And so students normally get money from their parents for their school fees, for their personal effects, and some of them are on scholarship. But because of the bad economy that we have, government cannot even remit money for student scholarship. Neither could parents get foreign exchange to send to their kids. So international students were now experiencing sort of multiple jeopardy because of their current situation due to COVID-19. Another thing that came into light here was the issue of availability and access to learning resources. Most of these students relied on the computers in the library to do their schoolwork and to access internet. Now that they have to live outside campus, and many of them live in places where internet is kind of problematic at times, where they have no access to the technologies that they had in the library. So you find that students had experience breakdown in their computers. They can't replace their computers, again, because of the financial conditions that they find themselves. And then with respect to support from professors and peers, during the normal academic section, they had the writing center where they could go to get some support for writing. But because of COVID, that is not available. Interaction with professors is sort of restricted and limited. And again, it creates some frustrations for these students in terms of their writing assignments and the expectation from most professors in the university. And so basically, they were not able to get the practical learning experience that they were getting when the university was physically open and students could interact with professors, peers, and staff. Again, as I said earlier, when I talked about the general economy globally, was that some of these kids, students, were isolated from their parents. They can't even travel home because the guideline on traveling became a bit confusing for them. They don't know whether if they leave the country, they can come back. If they come back, they have to be quarantined for 14 days. Then later you have the restriction in terms of staying in specific hotels for a period until you get your COVID test result. And all that cost money. And for international students, those were extra burden. And in addition to that, the inability to interact with their parents, to see their parents, to see their siblings, and other family members also provided extra stress in terms of COVID-19. As I said earlier, there is this policy. Students are being given admission. Some of them have not been able to get the visa to come to Canada. Some of them have gone to the extent of paying their school fees. Some have registered for courses online. And this particular Black student who had to contact me from Nigeria had this to say that she could not buy her books, for example, if I could assist her to get those books. And I said, I can't do that because right now I have my own restrictions in terms of my own disability. In addition to that, there are poor electricity in some of these developing countries. There is issue of digital divide that makes it more difficult for people in the South to access internet and have electricity to operate the internet in itself. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the inability to purchase the necessary resources for courses. All this contributes to additional stress on students. And then, more importantly, is the fear that when the immigration office is open, will they be able to get visa? And it is not automatic. It is not automatic that the embassies will issue you visa because you have gained admission. And so the question then is that if we don't get this visa, what happened to the investment that they have invested into the university in terms of their school fees? Would they be able to continue online, etc., etc.? Another thing that the students mentioned, those residents in Windsor, was the fact that because they've not been able to pay their school fees, the university was charging them extra money for, in terms of not being able to pay the school fees as at when required. And some of them, the money they owe the university has increased astronomically, that they do not even see how they will be able to pay up that school fees. And some of them have to actually withdraw from their program temporarily in order to stop the university from charging them interest on the outstanding bills that they owe in the university. and not to incur further debt. So in conclusion, I would read here that contrary to the stereotypical belief that all international students are privileged, many students are struggling to meet their needs, cope with online learning, and manage their studies while dealing with financial hardship, being away from family and loved ones, and having to isolate in their residences. Many feel dissatisfied and stressed by the lack of support and how they have been neglected during the palliatives made available to most Canadians. These experiences are likely to impact their mental health severely. Sharing the worries of most international students, we are unsure whether online studies is valuable to them. And as I say here, we plan to conduct a more robust study looking at the knowledge, attitude, and practices of international students. And we intend to use mixed methods and engage more international students in order to create more reliable and acceptable data. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Francisca, for your presentation. We can move on to the next speaker and then we can have our conversation. Jessica, I have your presentation, so I'll share it now.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Francisca, for sharing. Okay, so while we get the slides up, let me just give it a last try. No, I cannot share. Okay, so this is a wonderful surprise because I was expecting to be showing a video, you know, a cold video. And now that I had these situations with technology, it surprises me how life has always or gives us something better than we expect. So I'm happy to be here. I want to thank you all for your support. I would like to thank University of Windsor as well, and especially for giving us international students a voice. This program, or this idea, let's call it, started with teacher Julie Corrigan, Dr. Julie. She shared with my classmates and me. She actually invited us to the symposium, and once I heard the name of the symposium, I was completely connected to it, since I feel myself that I am in that spot. I am part of that community, and I would like to kind of contribute somehow. So I started thinking and reading and checking out what was going on out there, and I came up with this, let's call it Possibility, and it's a mentorship program. So I would like to, oh yeah, cool. I have remote control, that's great. Okay, so basically we're going to review a couple of pain points and then make a brief scan of what 3 universities, one in the US and 2 in Canada, are currently doing in this sense. And then we can go to our beautiful conversation that's waiting for us. So there's this phrase that says, my mentor said, let's go do, not you go do it. How powerful when someone says, let's. That's from Jim Rohn. And just to speak a little bit about myself, I'm Jessica. I'm currently in Mexico, just as Francisca shared with us. I'm part of that population of international students that couldn't make it to Canada yet. So I'm currently in Mexico, and I'm in the program of educational technologies at Concordia. And it's been a roller coaster of both certitude of what we appreciate in life and uncertainty too, and challenges and also achievements. So somehow I feel that this is a wonderful space and opportunity to connect and to speak up. So thank you for the opportunity. Now let's go to a quick overview. From the literature, I learned that 2/3 of international students experience loneliness or isolation due to, as Francisca mentioned, loss of family connection, loss of networks, and loss of culture and language practice. And right here in language practice, I would like to share with you how I feel about it. And honestly, losing the opportunity to connect with others due to isolation and all these things in your own mother tongue is really complicated. And obviously, this can all have a toll, an impact in our mental health, anxiety, confusion, and most dangerously, I guess, disappointment. A second pain point I would like to share with you is that efforts are more concentrated in recruitment more than in providing services during the studies, and mostly, or most importantly, I guess, after the studies. So kind of helping this community integrate to the host community in productive ways. And our third pain point is lack of employer awareness. So the government of Canada, for example, is encouraging small and medium-sized businesses to hire international students, and that's great. But there's a lot of work to do. Because if we go now to the next slide, if we go into a microanalysis of what an international student might experience throughout the career or the studies, we can see that one of the concerns is actually being underemployed. So there's a lot of work to do in that sense, not just support them to enter the programs, but to be well suited to join the workforce afterwards. And that would for sure reduce disappointment of the overall experience. Now, what about a macro analysis? There's a huge and beautiful and wonderful legacy that all this mix of different cultures bring to a host community. And in fact, there are researches that show how the people, the host students, improve their leadership, their empathy, and all that make them have better soft skills, which is very valuable these days. And of course, there's an impact on the overall Canadian Prosperity Index. So now let's go to what's going on out there already, because we do have a lot of programs right now. Probably it's more a sense of we're not getting the appropriate marketing strategies, or just encouraging these international students, like speaking for myself, to join or to make use of all this vast array of resources. So if we check what University of Western Ontario is doing, they started with a pilot in 2016, and now it evolved to what they call International Peer Guide Program. And it's a beautiful mentorship program where international students and the host peer get together once per week for the first semester, and they practice their language, share their culture, and socialize. And they, well, measured all the results through surveys per participants, and the results were really positive. There was an increase in sociocultural adaptation, in psychological adaptation, and a reduction in oxidative stress. So now, as I mentioned before, they have this program ongoing, and it's a very successful one. Now, we have in New York, NYU College of Arts and Sciences, they do have also a mentorship programs specifically designed for international students. And you can read the testimonials they have on their website, and they are amazing. A very important part of them, if we go to the results section here in the chart, it says increased adaptation, increased use of resources, and that's very important, and services, and reduction in settlement errors, increased overall feeling of being supported. So that's amazing. And it's actually very similar to the University of Western Ontario. In this one, it's for the first year, not just the first semester. And they share experiences and socialize, and so on. And now our last example in the scan I quickly did. Oh, yeah, slide 10. Sorry, slide 11. right here. Oh, I can't click on it. It's from Memorial University in Canada. And in this program, they put together a new international student with the host peer during the first semester also. They share effective study habits, they inform about support services, and socialize. They did a pilot with 120 post-monthly reports in 7 semi-structured interviews, and their pilot says that there is intercultural development for domestic students. So that is somehow related to the soft skills I was mentioning a minute ago. Now, what can we do with what we already learned from other examples? For example, I'm studying at Concordia, and it's been, as I mentioned, really complicated. Not only because of COVID and all the financial constraints and isolation it brought, and uncertainty too, but because we were like alone making decisions. Not even the people that were all willing to help knew what was going to happen. So I feel that walking or taking the hand of an international student throughout the process until they're well integrated to the workforce would be very valuable to the whole community. And I was thinking about an idea of a special mentorship program, a holistic one, where 3 different people from the university could somehow help the mentee or the student. Somebody, for example, from the international student's office, what would they do for the student? In this case, let's go to slide 14, please. And right here we have a description. Advisor from International Students Office would provide professional communication, how to effectively market themselves in the workforce, and cultural awareness training. Because we all know that it's not just about speaking the language of the host community, but learning how to communicate. And I've seen that. It's not just about, maintaining a conversation, but it's a way of mind that we need to be sensitized to. And network opportunities with potential employees and successful international alumni. And for example, in our university, we do have contact with successful international alumni, but there's always like this kind of limited and public, let's say, events where we cannot actually just go and ask that person, hey, how did you do to fit into the market force? What was your strategy? How can you help me? Because we do get a lot of tips, but it's more of general, And there's our second element of our 3+1 mentorship program, and it's our upper class host peer. So he or she would bring us socialization and cultural exchange to build belonging and friendship. Sometimes international students fail both academically and in their integration to a community because they don't feel they belong to. And that's very important, to feel that they belong to where they are actually interacting. And our third element, the teacher assistant or faculty. We know that faculty's opinion has a huge weight in the students, but they are always, their agendas are filled out. So the teacher assistant can help us locate resources and services and ensure academic success to our students, beating language barriers with grading options or choices that could reduce the stress as well. And lastly, I would like to share with you how I feel about it as an international student, given that you're giving me that voice right now. And I feel that I would love to experiment these 3 points that I'm sharing in this slide. The first one, recognition. Somehow say, listening to a you exist and we care. Secondly, interest. We would like to learn from you and with you. And third, appreciation. You matter and we care for you. And I think that if we get to this point, automatically the international student will feel at home wherever they are. So I'm no researcher, I'm no faculty in a university, I'm just an international student. More than happy to be here and thankful for the opportunity. And I wanted just to share with you my idea, and if it resonates somewhere, please just let me know. I'd be more than happy to hear from you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Jessica and Francisca. Great presentations, a lot to think about here. I was wondering if somebody had a question to get us started. We're happy to have you here just as much as you're happy to be here. So Jessica and Francisca, I had a question for you, and I think it's something that emerged also from yesterday about, you know, the definition of an international student. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I'm not an international student because I'm Canadian, or am I because my program is in Calgary and I'm in Europe? So what does that make me? Because a lot of what you talk about, I resonate with, even though I'm Canadian and I can, you know, I live there all my life and I can relate to my Canadian classmates and instructors, but I feel alone. I feel like I'm not sometimes being considered when the meetings are 3 o'clock in the morning, for example. It's really hard for me to have community. Of course, I'm not facing the problems that Francisca talked about, right? Being in Canada and not being able to go to my home country. But where do we draw the line of this international student? Because it seems to affect all of us in a different aspect. Could you comment on your thoughts about that? And Francisca as well?
Okay, Jessica, do you want me to start or you want to start first?
After
For
you,
me,
Francisca.
I think there is a big difference between international students and Canadian students who school in other provinces. One, as an international student, you need a study permit. You need a visa to get into Canada. That's one. Two, the visa will determine your rights and responsibility in Canada. So you don't have the right to work unless you are apt to work, and you only work where you should work. And thirdly, they are also charged differential tuition. The fees they pay is astronomically higher than what other students pay. In my time of schooling in Canada in the 70s, that was not the case. It was par, you pay the same thing. And then, as you said, they don't have the opportunity to see their parents that often. Once in a year, or if you have the resources, twice in a year. And under COVID-19, they can't even go because of fear of not being able to come back. I would probably want, and they are defined as international students. The university places these students coming from outside Canada who are not Canadian by birth, who were not born here, whose parents are not here, who don't have landed immigrant status. They put them in that box and they refer to them as international students. But I want to also highlight here that at times, even students who are not international students, who are born here, basically because of their racialized status, are often categorized as international students. My kids were born here, and while they school in Saskatchewan for 4 years, they were referred to as international students because they were Black and people felt they did not belong to that particular community. So I will end here and let Jessica add.
Thank you, Francisca. And I totally agree with you. It's a very good question, and thank you for bringing it up. Actually, when I started preparing for this symposium, my very first question was, who is the international student? And somehow, I even wrote in my notes, this is meat for thought. Because sometimes when we label people, we get different treatment. And it might be positive, but it might not be positive. So I think that probably not in the short term, But in the long term, it would be amazing to erase, these labels, because at the end of the day, we all are internations. We all have somehow relation between different people, different nations. So if we could probably start thinking it in a different way, instead of, okay, these are the international students, a lot of situations might be prevented. So I don't know, nowadays, well, it's obvious that international students are people that come from different countries to study, but at the end of the day, I think the word or the label has much more to think about, and probably start fading a little bit the label itself.
I think you've both made excellent points. I mean, yes, we know who international students are, and where can we go from that and the label, and how can we modify that or make it work for us rather than against us. There's a question in the chat, Francisca, for you. It's from Gabriella, and she says it's surely challenging for students from Nigeria. COVID has shed the light on some institutional problems, but what lessons could we learn from this situation, and how should things change? Have you got some examples of lessons learned that we can use and to move forward?
What I have learned is that, and what I want to put forward, is that why these students contribute to the economy, why they are also in the future going to be attracted and kept in Canada, and the government will reap the fruits of the investment of their parents. I think that during COVID-19 and in the future, when we have situations like COVID-19, that international students should be seen as part of this society. And the government, both local, federal, and provincial, should look into their welfare. And secondly, and most importantly, I would also suggest that the school fee, the tuition, should be either reduced, or the university should not charge them interest, because we know the economy is bad, and we know even within Canadians themselves, some of them have financial difficulties. Needless to talk of students who are coming from countries where the economy has gone very bad. Take, for example, Nigerian government lives on oil. And during COVID-19, crude oil became $25 or even less than that, or even $15. And so the money, the foreign exchange is not there. The foreign reserve is not there. So why don't you give these students the opportunity to not to pay interest on their school fees, and if possible, reduce the school fees temporarily, or at the same time, give them the opportunity to be able to work outside the university.
Absolutely, that would make it equitable for them. We talk a lot about equity, diversion, and inclusion, but in practical terms, what are we doing? And I think it was you, Francisca, that mentioned the gap. A lot of focus on getting the international students, some focus on integrating them, but in the middle, what do we do to support them? You're so right, the work, the fees. Is there a mentorship program at the University of Windsor? In Calgary, there is one for international students. And if I was actually a mentor, and I am a mentor, and I was assigned a mentee, and it's been a great relationship and journey for both of us. Is that possibility available at the University of Windsor specifically for international students?
At the University of Windsor, we used to run what we call work study, which means international students are allowed to work with a professor to mentor an international student. And in that process, the university will pay for certain hours. But that itself has reduced significantly, that fewer and fewer students have access to such a mentorship program.
You said the mentorship is from the professors. What about from peers, from other students that are interested in helping?
We don't have that, to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Jessica, there's a comment in the chat for you from Gabriella. She says it actually resonates a lot. The sense of belonging is something that interests presenters a lot here, and you can find some cooperations in here. Yeah, certainly. Yes, it sounds like an exciting project, and it would be very interesting to look into it. Sometimes, there's mentorship and it's informal. There is support and it's informal. Sometimes it doesn't have a label, but yet students might have a peer that helps them, or somebody from the Graduate Students Association, or a really nice TA that's willing to reach out to them, or a professor. So there's something to be said about support groups that are also informal. Do you think, in your experience, Jessica, or from your readings, that it makes a difference if we label it as a mentorship program, or if we happen to stumble upon it and a relationship of mentor-mentee develops?
I think it does, because once it's structured and available for everybody, it would target more people. It would be more equal, let's say, and probably it would also be more resourceful because it's already a formal program. Like in your case, I'm pretty sure you have your guides and all your protocols, training if required for the peers. And one point that I would like to probably strengthen here is that what about mentorship programs that are not just limited to the first year or semester, but a little bit longer? Because, nowadays and more after COVID, at least myself, I find myself just reading all the emails we get from the people at the university with job offers, and I honestly don't qualify to any of them. So it concerns me. How would I be able to integrate that workforce if I'm seeing, like, from now that I won't have the skill set required? And more with COVID, like, for example, in my case, I was like, okay, I'm intermediate French speaker. If I live 2 years in Montreal, then I would be able to sharpen my skills. But COVID, I'm in Mexico, so I already lost a year of language practice. So then I'm really worried about that. And I would truly feel that extending mentorship programs and making them formal with protocols would aid us. I don't feel myself well suited as of now because, to be honest, you can just read the offers and you know that to begin with, you're not totally bilingual. So there's already a gap that we need to train there and get some more training in. So I don't know. I'm sure that we could probably figure out a way to design these mentorship programs with a little bit of extra support, in having in mind that this community is eager to integrate to the host community, and they won't do it with a paper that says they have a master's in this or that. It's much more than that. And well, I don't know, probably we can figure out something around this. And
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Gabriel.
you too. What is your positive experience, Jessica, as an international student? What would make you recommend to a fellow colleague of yours to seek such an education?
Well, probably the best my best experience has been the people I've met, both my teachers, my professors, the guest speakers they bring to class, and most significantly, that I can call 2 or 3 of my classmates already friends, and that's magical. We're all the same people, different circumstances, different places and cultures, but we're all the same. So when we feel connected, even through a screen, it's just magic and it's inspirational. And it has happened to me a couple of times through the screen, and it just feels so beautiful. That's the best part of the experience.
Yes, well said. We all need to feel connected. Francisca, did you want to jump in with your experience and add a comment?
Yeah, I also want to speak from the experiences of international students. When you talked about the issue of being connected, have a sense of belonging. That's some of the things that the students lack here. Because unfortunately, not just because they are international students, but because they are Black students or they are Black males in particular. When they walk into Walmart, for example, they would observe people walking behind them, monitoring them, because it is always assumed that they're going to pick up something that they did not buy. And if they find themselves somewhere within the county where they don't have a lot of Black people, before you know it, the police will begin to ask them questions. And at times, even as students, when they are coming from the library at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., police will stop them and ask them questions. Do you live here? Where are you going to? And it becomes obvious that they become picked up, not just because they are male, but because they are Black. And that's something that has been an issue. And we've been talking about the whole issue of anti-Black racism in Windsor. And I'm hoping, like many other people, that we'll be able to address this issue and create a more conducive environment for all students, irrespective of their race and status.
On that point, Francisca, Olayemi has a question for you. If your knowledge will be shared with advisors at the university or the government for consideration, I think you touched on this point a little bit just now, but how are you communicating this information that you have from Nigerian students and interviews that you've had with them? What is the channel of communication with the University of Windsor?
We do this through conferences like this. Secondly, we have what we call races now. We have the Racial Justice Committee in Windsor. The University of Windsor, we have the new unit now on equity diversity initiatives headed by a Black professor. And so right now we're having this dialogue, this conversation between the students, between the professors and the university administrators on the way forward, so that we can bring all voices to bear on the topic and be able to carry everyone successfully. And I think by dialogue, by conversation, by talking about it, if I will answer Olayemi, by having policy briefs, by having radio program, television discussions, we'll be able to make our voices known and the government to hear more of what is happening. I don't think we have to wait for someone to die before Trudeau would visit and understand the plight of minorities and racialized groups in Windsor or in Canada as a whole.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Thank you. That answers my question.
Great. Olayemi, feel free to introduce yourself. We're a small group. If you wanted to share some of your experiences, we'd like to hear from you.
Well, at the moment, what I'm just particular about is many people have so many experiences in Nigeria, in Mexico, and some other places. But it's not enough to have the experience. It's enough for an action to be taken. That's always my own thoughts. So if an experience from Mexico, from Nigeria, it's just sitting down as an experience and nothing is done, then it's just one of those experiences. So I feel like we need to, like the government needs to listen to us, or the university needs to listen to us. Then it makes our research, it makes it evidence driven or policy driven research in a way. So that's my own thoughts. Thank you.
Please, Jessica.
I totally agree. Words are, taken by the wind. If we want to make a change, it's about taking action and finding the ways. There's always people looking for the same thing as you are. You just need to find them, and things start getting, going on. But definitely, I agree. It's not just about having a nice conversation and then forgetting, continuing with your life. We are a community already, and there's things to do. There's work to be done. And I also think that there are mechanisms, like Francisca shared right now, making public this voice. And there should be mechanisms. I'm sure that if we knock some doors, we can get some people into these things and make a change. And I'd love to do that before graduation. I'd love to, leave something before I complete my studies. I'd love to have, for example, the mentorship program that Elita, you just mentioned. That would be great to have something like that in our university. We don't have that. They just implemented, for example, some Zoom drop-in sessions during the COVID pandemic after they saw it was completely impossible to respond to all the emails and calls. So they started these drop-in sessions. And yeah, it's not easy. I've been waiting like 40 minutes outside the session and get nothing. So probably redo some protocols and additional efforts, redesign the efforts to really have a measurable impact, like what we were saying right now. If there's nothing done, why speaking about it? So I totally agree. This has to become a something, a real thing. Thank you.
I also want to add here quickly that that's where we need to be more active politically also. We need to have people in power that represent us, that understand our experiences and are willing to carry our experiences. We can do the bit we can do on the base here, on the baseline, but to get the policymakers to effect change, we need to put pressure on our MPs and our political leaders. And we all need to be political in our lives so that we are able to make that change that we need.
Thank you to both of you for such a great session and great presentations. We made it. Gabriela says, yes, Jessica. I doubt that we have a program at the university. Yes, some thoughts to leave us with. I think we're ready to wrap our session up and have a little break before the next one. Thank you to everybody. And that's all. I wish you a great afternoon.
Thank you so much for your time. And I would like to leave my email in the chat room if anybody wants to connect. Congratulations, Francisca, for your talk. And I learned from you. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody.
And you too. Thank you very much for that presentation. That was a good one.
Thank you.
Be in touch, Jessica.
Thank you to both of you.
And thank you, Gabriela, for your comments and for your contributions and your questions. And everyone here, thank you all.
Thank you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Gabriela. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.